Welcome to Reasonably Spontaneous Conversation. I'm Dennis Tardan. On March the 20th, 2022, Brandon Lasch died of an overdose of fentanyl and other drugs. This is his story, and also his mother's story, and she is here today to talk about Brandon's life and her journey in dealing with the loss of her child. Welcome, Lisa. Thank you for joining us today. Please.
Thank you,
Tell me
Dennis.
about Brandon.
A little bit about Brandon. Well, charming, funny, silly. He loved to read. He was a lover of words and language. That boy could talk puns and sarcasm and dark humor. At his celebration of life, one of his friends said one of the things that Brandon would always do is correct him on his grammar.
A man after my own heart.
I have no idea where he got that, but both he and his dad and me were also word lovers and big readers. So that was a big part of his life. I'm wearing an Arizona Cardinals jersey here today because Brandon grew up in Arizona until we moved to Texas when he was almost 17. So he grew up with the Cardinals. This picture that you see here, he and his girlfriend, this was about 2 months before he died. And for Christmas, she bought them tickets to the Cardinals Cowboys game. So
Wow.
You can imagine living in Texas and not being a Cowboys fan is not a real popular thing. But anyway, this was something that they got to do. They went up to Dallas to see the game, and if you can see it all on his face. How joyful that was. Those are all the good things. And in his celebration of life, something that I discussed and would be remiss in not talking about why we were there at a celebration of life and why you and I are having this conversation today. He was also a drug addict. That had been going on for many years. And with that come a whole lot of really unpleasant things, lying, stealing, anger issues, wrecking cars, taking our cars without permission and totaling cars. Interactions with the police. And so, when somebody says, tell me about Brandon, our default is to either focus on one or the other, this really great person with all these wonderful things.
We're all mixed bags. And that's what we're talking about today. And we're talking about this complex human being. And then you get the call.
I actually, it was a knock on the door at 5:30 in the morning on the 21st of March, 2022. So I was in, deep sleep. And, I woke up, it's like, is that the doorbell ringing? And it's like, oh, I must just be dreaming. And then I hear pounding, and then I hear pounding on the windows, and so I'm kind of scared. It's like, is somebody breaking in? What's going on? And I went to the door, looked out the peephole, and just still in a fog. And I opened the door, and there was a police officer there. There was another woman with him. And as I was trying to kind of absorb everything, then I saw Brandon's girlfriend, Kate, and even just telling it, my heart is kind of racing, and
Of
I'm
course.
kind of back in that moment, those moments. Um, and it was, are you Lisa Lasch, Brandon Lash's mother? And it was truly like watching some crime show on TV. We regret to inform you. And I'm like, wow, what did I dream last night? What did I watch last night? And so that was how I found out that my only child was dead.
Along with it, I know that when I've experienced some deaths in my family in this, there is both the tragedy and then there's all the bureaucracy that has to go with death, that has to go now. All the things you have to do in this, you had a lot of negotiating and challenges to go into that. How did you deal with that?
Well, out of order deaths like this, nobody is ever prepared for.
You can't.
And he was 27 at the time. And so because they suspected an overdose, because they did find drugs in his apartment and confiscate those, there was an investigation. That's a whole nother thing. So there was an investigation, and part of when I said there was the police officer and a woman, she was the victim's advocate. And so she had a folder in her hand, and she started pulling out these papers, and here's the coroner's office, they're going to do an autopsy, and there's listings of groups, and there's listings of different organizations. And I mean, it was basically, a list of what to do next. And what was overwhelming for me as a reader, when I see words on a page, I want to read them. And it was just words and words and words and words and words that meant absolutely nothing. But within a few hours, when like I said, it was 5:30 in the morning. A lot of my family is in Arizona, so it was even earlier. I couldn't be calling them. I had to call Brandon's dad and let him know about that. And basically after that call, it was like, what do I do with my dead son now? And the first phone call that I made was to UT San Antonio, because this list of things that I had received said that they accepted whole body donations. And so I talked with a very nice woman there. She said they could not take him because there was going to be an autopsy. And so she then referred me to Texas State, and I think that was the slide that showed up.
Exactly. This is the Forensic Anthropology Center.
Yes, the Texas State Forensic Anthropology Center. And by this time, like I said, the police were here at 5:30 in the morning. This was a little bit after 9 o'clock. And the coordinator of the program at Texas State, I left a voicemail. I received a call back from him within 10 or 15 minutes. And he explained the program. So the Texas State Forensic Anthropology donation program is a place where you can donate your loved one's body, and they study the decomposition. So the bodies are placed out in the Texas elements, in a little, think of like a dog kennel type thing. And they collect data and study the decomposition of their donations. Almost the minute I heard this man's voice, and certainly within 2 or 3 minutes of him explaining what they did there, I knew that was where Brandon was going to go.
What a gift. What a gift that he would be able to provide the scientific research.
Yes. And so as I learned more about the program, as I started going through, filling out the paperwork and everything that was associated with that, I knew more and more. I was a high school biology teacher for 20 years. And so Brandon grew up in a science household. His dad is a science person. He was in the Navy, worked on nuclear subs. And so science was always, a real conversation in our home. Of course. And I also have to tell the story of the circle of life and how this fit in.
Exactly, because this is what I want, because you are now this has not been long, and your journey of grief in healing and going through the different stages of grief as you're going through, can you help to share with us this journey that you went on?
Well, and so, like I said, I feel like that really kind of has to start in the summer of '94 when I was pregnant with Brandon. The original Lion King came out, and Michael and I went and saw that movie. I was 6 months pregnant, maybe. And from the moment that first, that music that you hear, I started sobbing, and I bawled through the entire movie. He's holding up Simba, and it's like I got this baby in me. And so the Lion King was just always a big thing in our house, combined with the fact that I taught biology, and we always talked about the circle of life and how matter cycles and energy flows. That's what Brandon grew up with. And so to bring that to my conversation with the Texas State Anthropology Center, I immediately knew, it's like, okay, decomposition, everything's returning to the soil. We're getting scientific evidence about this that can help other people when unidentified bodies are found. And so I just knew, it was like at every moment that was it was like, yep, you're doing this is the route you need to be going. And then once the decision had pretty much been made, and Brandon's girlfriend, Kate, and I went over to his apartment, and she said, Lisa, I have to tell you about this text message that Brandon sent me. And he was an overnight manager at an IHOP, takes after his mom, very social, can absolutely talk about anything with complete strangers and be very engaging. And they were kind of taking a religious thing, being saved and religion. And he really wasn't having any of that. And later that night, he was texting with Kate, and she said, well, what do you think happens when you die? And he said, I believe in the circle of life. Once you die, hopefully something can happen that will help others. What other choice was there?
Now, you received some pushback.
I did. And I understand why.
Because we all have different belief systems, different ways.
And this is completely out of the norm. I mean, it's weird.
Certainly.
It's flat out weird. And Michael was concerned that we wouldn't have any ash. I mean, it was basically between this or cremation.
Yes.
And he really, he's like, well, I want the ashes. And I said, okay, well, let me do a little more digging. And I called the Forensic Anthropology Center back, talked with the coordinator again, and he said, well, did Brandon have long hair? I'm like,
yeah.
Oh, he had this glorious long hair.
Mane, like in the Lion King.
Yes, good point. And he said, we can absolutely do a snip of hair that you can have for some keepsakes. And that to me that's an embodiment of life. No, the hair's not living, but it's a living embodiment.
Exactly. As you're going on. So Lisa, then it happens, that's done with, and here you are, and you're having to go through the healing process. How did you approach that?
The first 4 months is just pure survival. It's like healing. What is that? How can that ever happen? And I was so deluged with the logistics, the paperwork, getting accounts closed, and when I can't tell you how many different people said, well, we need the account holder to get on the phone. He's dead. And hours and hours. And so it was I want to say in July, so March, April, May, 4 or 5 months after he had died. I had sought out a group, the Compassionate Friends, and that's a grief group that focuses on parents who have lost children, or siblings. So it's not just, it's kind of targeted for specific grief. And so I had been going there, and it just so happened in July, Beto O'Rourke was running for governor, I believe, at the time. And he was having a rally, a speech here in Pflugerville. And I fought with myself all day long. Should I go? Should I not go? Oh, it's supposed to rain. Oh, where am I going to park? Oh, there's going to be all these people, and I don't think I'm ready for that. All day long, I fought with myself. And then finally it was like, Lisa, get in the car and go. And I did. And I saw a woman a few rows in front of me. And when she turned, she had a big button on her shirt. And I could see it was a picture of a young man, a teenager or a young man. And the second I saw that, then I looked at the back of her shirt and it said "End Overdose." And it just literally took my breath away. And I went up to her and I tapped her on the shoulder and I said, I think I need to know you. And that was when I met my friend Lynn, and she introduced me to the Christi Center, which is a nonprofit free grief organization. And one of the specific groups they have is Lost to Overdose. So I went to the next meeting. So by this time, it's like August, and saved my life, changed my life. Really was where I started healing. Being with like-minded people, like experienced people. I think death by overdose and death by suicide both carry stigmas that can make you feel very, very isolated.
Yes.
And so having, like I said, a group of people who were experiencing these same kinds of challenges was really beneficial. And so those pictures that you put up are from a couple of events that we have: an annual overdose awareness, fentanyl overdose awareness at the end of August. And so that's when we get together and recognize and honor and inform the community.
Yes. And it is such a valuable opportunity for you to be able to do that and to be able to get involved.
It is. And, I'm a little over 3 years into this. And I've always been an advocacy type person, to get involved. One of the things that Brandon and I did every election is we went together and voted. And that's something every time I go to vote is a trigger because he's not there with me. But one of my challenges has just been to figure out what my place is in the advocacy world. And I'm still working on that. And there's a lot of things to do out there, but I just need to figure out where I can do my best and have the biggest impact.
Yes. Lisa, it's an honor that you would come here with me and to talk with me about this journey that you're on, the arc. I don't know that it ever it ends. I have talked with a number of parents who have had children die, and it's something that continues to but there is a blossoming, there's a healing, there's a fruit that comes from this that I see you working through and participating and growing so that others can have an opportunity to be able to heal also.
Thank you. That's at my core. I'm an educator. And so, that was when you first brought this up to me. It's like, oh, I don't even, what direction even to go. And so, the educator in me, would encourage people to look for alternative options after death, like the Texas State Forensic Anthropology donation program. I know not all states have those. That would be one of the main things. One of the other things too is, as a parent, we spend a lot of time beating, not just the parents, but everybody in our group, beating ourselves up with the coulda, woulda, shouldas. And so that's a big part of the healing process. This was Christmas time. You can see that glorious hair that he had. So, I think for parents, particularly of teenagers, our biggest struggle then, and I still think of it so much, is guidance on, how to recognize, is this normal teenage experimentation, rebellion, all of that versus, when was the line crossed, and how as a parent do we navigate that? And I got nothing right now. So
Yeah.
Even in retrospect, I got nothing.
Absolutely. Lisa, thank you so much. Thank you for your friendship. It's lovely to know you in real life, not just here. And thank you for coming on to Reasonably Spontaneous Conversation and sharing your journey.
You're welcome, Dennis. Thank you. And you know what? I will leave this with my little sarcasm and funny, because we talk about journeys in group a lot. And it's like, no, if I'm going on a journey, I want my sunscreen, I want a beach, and I want a swimsuit. This is not a journey. I don't know what it is, but I'm not calling it a journey.
Wonderful. All right. Thank you, Lisa, and thank you, everybody, for being with us today on Reasonably Spontaneous Conversation in this wonderful story and this of absolute of something beyond something that I could have experienced, but you gave us an opportunity to experience it through your eyes and through your words. So thank you, Lisa.
Thank you, Dennis. I appreciate it. And I appreciate having you as a neighbor.
Thank you. And thank you. And we'll see everybody on another Reasonably Spontaneous Conversation next time.